Right, so after each session practice, quali raise, the tire pressure and fuel average disappears. I don't know what you mean about that. How far into the corner do you take the braking? Well, it depends. It depends your level, first of all. Um, with those cars and the level of simulation that Competizione has, uh, the cars are extremely sensible into the aerodynamic. We already said that thousands of times, but don't worry, I will never get tired to keep repeating it because it is a completely new experience. Until now, in practically every sim, we could trail brake really, really hard into the turns, rotate the car, and then, practically make the car almost aligned straight on the apex and storm ourselves with a little bit of drift out of the turns. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, depends how you see it, but it's more realistic definitely because it is also what you can see that the real drivers do with the real cars. In assetto corsa competizione, the aerodynamic sensitivity, pitch sensitivity, doesn't permit to trail brake easily until the apex of the turn. Um, Also, it definitely doesn't permit to do lots of drifting. It doesn't permit you to do wide angles. You have to keep it you know very very narrow in the angles and the rotation that you can do. So um, also, we have a very advanced ABS system. And by advanced, I do not mean that it is perfect. On the contrary, it's much closer to the reality. And the ABS system of the reality, it's not so perfect, especially when you turn in. And so you need different braking force to left and right. While it is true that in reality you can slam the brakes in the straight line and the car will just slow down without any problems at all because we are talking about very very advanced systems. And as everybody in the GT3 series will tell you, I mean real drivers, while you are on the straight line you just have to slam, go hard on the ABS as much as you can, and the car will make everything perfect for you. The problem, the things get complicated when you start turning in. When you turn in, um, obviously the front inner wheel will become much lighter, and at some point, uh, the braking pressure on that wheel should be very low. But the ABS system is made in a way, both because of constraints of reality and both because they don't want to create extreme torque vectoring, unwanted torque vectoring. So at some point, uh, the ABS will not modulate perfectly the braking pressure on the inner front wheel. So that's why if you keep braking hard and you also turning, you'll see that your inner wheel will start locking. This is exactly what it happened with the real cars. Now, before that, except for example, Assetto Corsa One, you could brake as hard as you can, and the front inner wheel would never lock up. In Competizione, this doesn't happen. It will lock up because that is what the real system does. So, what to do? As I said, depends on your ability. Uh, Obviously, the best you can do is if you can really nail the braking distance and the turn in, you can trail brake right into the apex and then accelerate. But that, especially with those cars, is extremely difficult. The aliens do it, but not always and not everywhere. Even the aliens, I've seen them, they prefer to, do the turn in with a little bit of, trail braking after they have, get into the line and the first phase of the turn in is done, release the brakes completely, release the brakes, and go from that point to the apex coasting, just with the engine brake. This, in the end, with these cars, is even faster because it keeps more speed into the uh, inside the turn. And why that is happening? It happens because you have the aerodynamic balance. You don't have straight speeds, so the car has a better aerodynamic platform, and also, and as a result, it creates more downforce, and that permits you to have more speed inside the turn. So braking as hard as you can, turning in, modulating the brake as usual. But after the initial turn in, my advice is, except if you are, the alien of the aliens, uh, my advice is after the initial turn in, release the brakes and do the last part of the turn from the end of the turn in to the apex in coasting without touching either the brake or the accelerator. That is probably the faster way to do it. All right. All right. So yeah, yes. Well, sorry guys. There is a question by Hierski. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your nickname, so I'm terribly sorry about that. But he says he's trying to use lots of rear brake bias to compensate the lockings and stuff like that. And it works obviously because if you use more rear brake bias, you can lock less the front wheels. It's not something impossible. 50% on the Ferrari is not something strange to hear. I've seen the real cars do that. Keep in mind that 50% doesn't mean that the force is equal 50% front and 50% rear. The numbers that we show you are the authentic numbers of the real cars, but the force is not the same. It's the hydraulic force of the brake bias, uh, but the actual force that tends to the disc rotors is a little bit different and usually more towards the front from what you see inside the dash of the car. And that is because the front brakes are bigger, they have more uh, pistons. They have better pads. The pads are different, even if the code is the same. The pads are different front and rear, and so all of that, makes the force of the braking being different than what you see. So when you see 50, in reality, it's probably something around 60, 62, 64, something like that. But the dashes of the cars, each car is different and shows you how the hydraulic pressure moves. Let's not go into this, but just keep in mind that it's just a number and nothing else. Of course, as you said, if you move the brake bias way too much to the rear and you also use the accelerator to stabilize the car, which is something that I've seen some real drivers do every once in a while, not to the extent as we do it in the simulators, but they do occasionally do it. But as you have already saw, you end up with the brake pads worn out sooner than they should. I mean, for example, brake pads number one, they should last for at least 3 hours, but already seen aliens, consuming them in 2 hours and a half, for example. Uh, and that's an issue that depends on your driving style. I have also seen many people using very very low brake ducts to keep the brakes always in the green zone. But but that doesn't mean that the brake pad won't go into a peak temperature which is high. And the higher is the peak temperature, the more you consume it, because the consumption is also connected to the temperature. And that's why you see the brake pads getting worn before the 3 hours. So guys, you take your risks and those are the results. All right. So let's see if there is something else. Yes, the pad wear resets in each session. Actually, it resets every time you go back to the garage and back into the straights. so you don't have to worry about that. Yes, we could have made it limited, but it's quite a bit of a problem and issue to create all of that. And it's not a big deal in the end. I mean, whenever they need brake pads, they just change it. Shutterpoint says, I have a TR 300 RS. My wheel seems to clip a lot and the FF goes red. How do I fix that? Well, as Tortellini says, you have to reduce in game force feedback gain. But my advice is if you see the force feedback bar underneath the RPM uh, HUD, if you see it going red over very high speed turns, so lots of downforce, or on the curbs, that's not bad. It should do it. I mean, it should clip a little bit on consumer wheels when you're going over such situations. It will also let you feel more the roads and the forces at lower speeds and normal situations, because in the end, that is what you want to do. You want in normal situations to feel as much as you can, and in extreme situations that happens 2 or 3 times during a lap, it clips a little bit, but in the end you do know that there's tons of force because something is you are at the extreme uh, range of the forces, so who cares? I mean, it doesn't matter that you go over the curb and instead of doing this from the force it does this, and with a little bit of red because it clips, it's the same, right? So if it if it becomes red just a little bit on some points of the circuit and not during every single turn, then my advice is let it clip like that. Are you going to make a stream dedicated to aerodynamics and rake? I have already done that. Maybe we can do it again. But in the meantime, go check the playlist that I have made. Go through all of them. Check the titles, and you will find the video. Bum, 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 bum. You have micrograining, but well, it depends. RDG says I have micrograining. I believe on the force feedback when driving the Huracan, almost like rod effects are on even, almost like if rod effects are on, even though they are not. Um, Well, what is actually might be happening is two things. Either the road has micrograining, because depending on the circuit, some circuits are extremely flat, some circuits are very abrasive and have some, noise, which translates to a tiny bit uh, to the steering wheel. Or you might have extremely high, extremely stiff um, dampers, extremely stiff dampers. And what it happens if you have very stiff dampers, then and the circuit is a little bit noisy into the surface, then the dampers won't let the suspension move freely because they are extremely stiff, especially the slow dampers, and you get a tiny bit of vibrations and oscillations. uh, this is an indication that you are going way too stiff, probably. If it works and you feel safe with the car, go for it. But probably if you lower a little bit the damping, you see that the micro vibrations uh, lower, getting they get lower and lower. Easiest cars for beginners, probably the Aston Martin V8, probably. Yes, I think that is the Miata of the of the GT3 cars. But it gets very difficult to go extremely fast because it doesn't have enough power, so you have to gain all your speed into the turns. So it's safe, it's nice car, it won't bite you back, but up to a point. Then it becomes harder and harder. Uh, Another thing, tires and pad wear are proportional to race distance. Ooh, proportional. I mean, yeah, they are proportional to the ambient conditions, to the asphalt temperature, to your driving style. A lot. It's the most important factor, the driving style. to the kind of circuit, because different circuit has different asphalts and consume the tires more or less. Um, yeah, all of these factors. It's not something scripted. It really depends about from all those factors: ambient conditions, track design, driving style, all of that. It's really strange because I had the impression that I had an easy 42 before when I was analyzing the laps, and now I just cannot do it. So let's stop a little bit, drink some water, as the guy says on the chat, uh, say a couple of things, and then try again. Let's try again. Your wheel looks to be set a little too high. It is, but unfortunately, I have to do compromises because you have to work constantly here. What I do is I have another computer on the side, and I have another seat here, and the steering wheel is positioned on the desk because I need the big desk, and the rig here is just a self-made rig to enter properly. So what I do is, I jump to the other computer, do the work on the data, whatever, jump here again, start the sim, drive some, get some extra data, jump to the next seat again, and so on and so on. So it is all of this. Sorry, it's a compromise, to be able to work somehow. Ah, so let's see. One man army. Yeah, sort of. You're addicted to the mountain. um, you find the Porsche very difficult to get right on Suzuka. The Porsche is very difficult to get right everywhere, and it's not that in the sim. The real car, especially the old one, but the new one also, it's not so easy. It has a very narrow window of operation, which changes from track to track, and it requires completely different setups going from one track to another. Uh, Generally, it's not an easy car to drive. Needs a lot of work from the driver. Needs a lot of work from the engineers. But with the latest model and the BOP that it has, it is also competitive at least. So it is a car that you can use to win, but certainly requires tons of work. Right. What else do we have here? If you select an Ikumi, I guess you mean IGTC car. So if you select an IGTC car on a non-IGTC circuit, what BOP is used? It is used the BOP relative to that circuit. The BOP changes for every circuit and every circuit year. So whatever car you choose, each car for every circuit has a different BOP. That's why we say that, okay, you might choose a car that on one circuit is a little bit slow, but on the next circuit might be able to win. It goes like this. But you can be certain that for every circuit you have a specific BOP applied, and it's always different. Hi, Aris. There is currently a lot of confusion regarding front-rear stiffness balance. A quick example, one to click stiffer rear springs cures so much of the Merc understeer everywhere. Well, that happens because if the stiff are, softer, then the rake of the car changes. You get more squat, for example, at the rear, and that moves the downforce backwards. Moving the downforce backwards means that you get more traction, but also more understeer. Uh, Obviously, if you stiffen up the rear springs, you have less squat, So the downforce remains pretty much closer to whatever initial value. Usually it's the center of gravity. They try to stay close to there. And that makes the car more neutral. It also acts better when you try to turn in, because a stiffer rear end will mean that it will move less both in squat but also in rebound when you are braking. And if you have less movement in rebound, it means that you don't have so much downforce at the front, and so the car is more stable in turning too. Um, but obviously, what you gain in downforce stability, you lose in mechanical grip. So it's always a compromise. Uh, Your problem with the Porsche is usually lift off oversteer in braking zones in downhill sections. Well, do you remember um the hammer example, guys? With the hammer, in the Porsche you have all the weight at the back, and it wants to turn around and go to the front. So go and check the video about the hammer. I think it's into the understand your car video. So if I pick, for example, the 2018 Jaguar and go do practice on a IGTC track, will it use a BOP from a European 2018 track? Not exactly. Now, the BOP, balance of performance, is not arbitrary, at least not completely arbitrary. There are rules and there are equations. So if we know how the car, what weight it has, how much power it can create, etc., etc., and we also have an idea of what BOP it has in similar trucks, then we can deduce the BOP for the new truck. So on the new trucks, it should have proper BOP as if the car was, participating on that circuit. Obviously, it will never be the exact BOP because there's always some range that if they see in the tests that the car with the supposedly correct BOP is a little bit too fast or too slow, they can update it a little bit and go a little bit up or a little bit down. We try to do the same thing uh, in terms of what they let us know on the range they can move around. So we think that we are, assigning the correct BOP that the car should have if it were to participate on a track in real life. uh, my mate, my friends, and I have a lot of trouble in the BMW everywhere. Should we give up and change cars? I don't know. In the new IGTC trucks, especially about thrust, I think the BMW can be pretty competitive. But on the old European trucks, it is a little bit of a difficult car. It is easy to start with, but it is difficult to bring to the limit and gain speed with it. It's not so easy. If you want to see how difficult the BMW is, go check the GT World channel at the what was it? Brands Hatch Circuit and Race 2018. The BMW had tons of problems. I mean, the car couldn't stay on the road. They had really big problems. It's a very nice example to go and check. Why is the Porsche Cup in this series? Because in 2018 and also 2019 Spa 24 hours race, the Porsche Cup cars were invited and to make the grid bigger because they wanted to arrive to 70 cars for the 70 years of the 24 hours race. And so we've managed to get the permission, the license, back in the days when we started working on Competizione, and so this is why those cars are in. Same thing applies for the Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo first car, not the Evo. No, Wesley the Gray says, are you able to dampen the physics of light taps from other cars? As at the moment, the light tap does same as heavy tap. Unfortunately, we cannot do that. It's something that the core of the physics engine that is based in Ode is producing. We are trying to find a solution, but for the time being, it's I cannot give you any timeline about that. But for sure, we're looking into it. We're trying hard. It's not easy at all. So I don't know what to tell you. I would say just no for now, and that's it. All right. So let's see. Let's do some questions and answers. Right. Let's do, I don't know, half an hour of questions and answers. So let's start with Enjoyer Belgium. I'm terrible at saying nicknames or names. Next live race with people community, possibly, if we find a good server and there's something to do. Yeah, why not? Uh, the rear is still too soft, absolutely. uh, Okay, so Tom France asks a very interesting question. He says, um, can you shed some light regarding developing the Lambo Rex, the Lambo Gallardo Rex for ACC, and why the car requires such a radically different setup philosophy, at least in my experience? Um, yes, the car is very old. Uh, it it doesn't have much downforce. It doesn't have much downforce, and it has also a very narrow operating window. Again, I remember you guys go and check my video talking about what the operating window of a car is, of a modern racing car. So it means that it is very pitch sensitive, and uh, each aerodynamic element, back in the days, let's say, and with the money that the Rex team, the budget that they had and the facilities, uh, each aerodynamic element of the car is not really made to work together. It's not designed. I mean, the splitter. It's not designed to work with the rear diffuser. It's not designed to work with the rear wing. Each car is as good as they could do, which is pretty good for a non-works car, but they're still different, which means that they do not cooperate properly, and even tiny differences in the ride height make one or the other go into stalling or just simply not working anymore together. The modern GT3 cars, especially uh, cars like the Ferrari, the Audis, the Lambo, the new Lambo Evo, the Honda NSX, of course, the Mercedes, and all of those. Uh, its its aerodynamic component is made to work together with the others, trying to widen the operation window as much as possible, and of course obtain the best performance. Now, obviously, the BOP takes into account that the car is old and it's not so competitive. So what it does is, they make it very light. It has minimum ballast, much lighter than the other cars, and they let it have lots of horsepower. I believe it was also probably in the plans that the car would have competed only at the Monza circuit, and that obviously gave them lots of top speed, and the lightweight made the car also very um, agile into the chicanes. But obviously, as I said, the car is not the complete package, so it showcases the problems. It is twitchy. It needs different and specific setups to work. Uh, it doesn't have enough downforce, so it has to, work with the power of the engine. The ABS and the traction control are not as good as on the other cars, so all of those things, ask for specific setups and specific driving style too. Okay, let's see what else do we have here. Uh, am I considering doing a setup stream for the car? You mean for Sorry. Where are you? I've lost you. Um, for the Rex, yeah, we could do that at some point. Probably not as soon as possible, but at some point, yes, why not? Um, Tortellini, for comparison, jumped into the R8 Evo and did a 41.9 at the second try. Thank you, my lord. Good for you, bad for us. 41.5 or go home. I'll go home. Actually, I am at home. Um, Tortellini in the Merc did 42.7, so well done for us again. Where's the Jaguar? Sleeping. You know, cats like to sleep a lot. Uh, see. Right. No, the NS6 is not fastest. It is very fast, but if you see, it depends on the track. For example, Suzuka, the fastest car is the Aston Martin, probably, yeah, and the NS6 is very close. In Bathurst, the Mercedes is at the same time, so it is very fast because it has a lot of power in the engine. In Kyalami, the Lamborghini is faster. The Porsche Evo is even faster. I mean, it's up and down. And again, you have to remember, yes, the Honda NSX can do a very fast lap time, but then in the race, the fuel consumption, the tire consumption is different. Lots of things to consider. Also, all of that stuff was valid. I don't remember which version. I think with one of the hotfixes, the Honda probably lost a tenth or so in its track. But again, as I said, more or less. And also, again, this is with the aggressive preset and specific conditions. In different conditions and maybe a setup made, specifically, it changes even more. Okay, let's move on. Uh, Would you consider the idea of a fixed competition race each week for once a day? I don't know. You should ask Kevin Stock Minolin. This is the guy that uh, is responsible of all the things multiplayer. Share the replay. Yeah, sure. No, why not? Uh, Plug says everyone asks what Aris is doing, but no one asks how Aris is doing. How are you doing, mate? Very well. Thank you so much, mate. Thank you so much. I'm doing fine. Uh, Tortellini, is easier to stall an aerial because of lower density? No, no, not really. Density doesn't, it could do something, but not really. Stall comes from the angle of the pitch, from the ride height if you are too close to the surface, from the yaw angle. So if the car is moving, sideways, you could stall the front split or the rear wing, and more importantly, the diffuser. All that stuff can make an aerodynamic element go into stall, which means losing the flow and losing all the downforce. All right, so what else do we have here? I doubt the simulator viscosity. No, not really. Yes, we don't simulate air viscosity. We do simulate some of the effects, of the end effects, but air viscosity in real time, I mean, uh, I'll be honest, I said the Corsa Commission is already uh, um, a title that needs lots of hardware resources. Air viscosity is not possible in real time alone, let alone all that graphics and AI and everything. So, no. Does the temperature of the time affect the car engine? It affects everything. It affects the car engine, independently also between turbo and normal aspirated cars. It affects the tires. It affects the brake pads. It affects the air density and as such the aerodynamic drag, aerodynamic resistance, and aerodynamic possibility to do downforce creation production. It really affects everything, and the colder it is, usually the faster the car goes. The engine also is has lots of it has more power, at least up to a point. After that, we have possibly humidity problem. So depends. Now that you mentioned operating window, how large or narrow is the Jaguar's window? Uh, the Jaguar has a pretty large operation window, but it doesn't really change a lot. I mean, it's not a car that it gets affect. I mean, a little bit the chassis flex, which it's a little bit on the soft side, so the car doesn't react so well into the setup changes. A little bit the aerodynamics. I mean, it's a car that you don't gain, or it doesn't change completely the its behavior because of setup changes. It still maintains some of the character, you know. And yes, rear is hard to get good because it has tons. I mean, tons, no, but it has lots of weight at the front. It's like 56 or 55, something like that, percent at the front. So obviously the rear is lightweight, tons of torque and power because of the BOP to help it, but obviously doesn't help it in traction. So sorry to go off topic, Aris, but is it a possibility that Kunos will be including GT4 cars in the future? Again, licensing question. I sincerely don't know what to tell you, and even if I knew, I cannot tell you because license, contracts, signs, agreements, everything. It's not my place to say something. I can assure you once again, for such things, the only way to have news is just following the official, forums and social media and website. This is where you're gonna learn about that. So Hendrickson says, I don't see the attention people put on lap times only. I like endurance racing and focus on consistency. Little less risks in the racing lines and take care of the tires. This is endurance series, and I love you for this. You are so right. I mean, yes, we did this kind of live stream now to showcase people how much they can gain, but just by driving. But, but the most important thing is racecraft. So, you know, knowing how to race, which we should probably do a live stream about that, knowing how to, overtake, how to position your car, how to defend, all of these things. And even more important, uh, creating a safe setup that makes you go fast, yes, but also safe for the long races. And this is something that we already showcased on the previous videos when we were doing race weekends and we were using limited tire sets. So limited tire sets permit us, to work on worn tires, understand how the brake pads react, how the tires react when they are worn out, how the car with full load reacts, how the car with when it gets lightweight by consuming all the fuel load, how it reacts and all that stuff. This is very very important. Things also like knowing how to enter the pits, when to stop, how to exit the pits. All of this is extremely important for races because in the end you can be as fast as you want, but if you don't know how to race, as Bert says, then it doesn't make any sense at all, right? All right, so let's see. Uh, do you plan to organize competitive endurance races, or have you left it on the shoulders of the community? I don't know for sure because, as I said, Minolin, Kevin Stock, is responsible for all of that. He's doing an amazing job, but I know that the whole competitive servers are just starting right now, and so lots of experimentation is going on behind the scenes. And I'm pretty sure that in the future, new and different kind of races will appear. I don't know to tell you exactly what is going to happen or what is the time schedule for that, but I'm pretty sure that Kevin, knows about that and thinks about that. You can ask him on the forums; he's always very happy to reply. So if he's alive, if he's still alive for the tons of work that poor guy has, but yeah, just ask him. Blah, blah, blah. Hello, Aris. Free Spacing asks, hello, Aris. Aston V8 has few LED indicators around the dash. Does it show ABS and TC in work? If I'm correct, they show slip of the tire. So if there is wheel spin or if there is ABS, lock. So if you see them lighting up, you either have to change your driving style or react, or maybe on occasion change the level of traction control and ABS. For example, maybe the circuit is uh, to not rubbered enough, so not in optimum situation, or maybe you have a wet track and your traction control is too low, so you need to work with it. Uh, Rolf Coptero says, "All right, but you say what you would like to add." Oh, I would like to add everything. I would like to add GT4s. I think they would be great. I would like to add vintage, but I think it's gonna be practically impossible. But yeah, it could be fantastic. And Thorium Music says that I rock. Thank you, mate. Yeah. Uh, uh, Aside from guys not knowing where to enter the pits, and I've seen it on CP servers, you're so right. My favorite is just before every race, how much fuel? Oh man, this is so true. I mean, I've seen even, aliens in like, 3 hours race or 9 hours, 6 hour race, and you watch the chat and it's like, how much fuel? How much fuel? Put everything in. I mean, who cares? You know, it's not like if you manage to put 5 liters less, it's gonna completely change your lap times. I mean, just put the fuel in if you don't know, or even more importantly, do some testing before that, some calculations, and get ready for the race. To give you an example, when we tried to do the 6 hours race at Nürburgring with my fellow colleagues Gergo and Kevin, uh, the guys did other preparations. One of my own jobs and preparation, I did 1 hour, more than 1 hour stint to see how long I could go with the tires and fuel. So we were ready. Anyway, uh, in Motec, can you have ACC make a new clean file for each new session? I don't know. Probably we can probably look about that. It won't be soon, but I can take note of it and see if we can do something. Magic Dog 28 asks, how did I learn vehicle dynamics? Hmm. How did I learn vehicle dynamics? All right, let me show you. Let's have a look. Give me a second. Actually, let's also change this into something like that. Okay, yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So how did I learn vehicle dynamics? Let's see. Give me a second. Be right back. It's not easy. Well, pretty much this way. Oh, God. Help, help. All right, so let's put this on, possibly, so that you can hear me. So how did, uh, so that's an Italian book, Assetto, of course, which means setup, of course. Uh, this is a Formula One technology, very nice book, highly recommended. Going faster, this is basic book, but you can always learn something, especially initially. Uh, Racing Performance Tire, very very good book, it's exceptional. Formula One and prototypes, uh, race car engineering, but again basic but pretty good. Tune to Win, race car dynamics, um, the aerodynamica and Potenza in Formula One, Italian book, very nice. What is this? Race car engineering, and this is just some of the books. There are tons back there, and obviously tons um, PDFs, other books more important. Lots of books for specific cars over there, um, and all of that stuff you read it slowly. I'm not showing you that thing to make a big idea about myself. It is something that you have to do if you want to learn about. I mean, books is where you learn things. There's no other way. But there's also something else. Now, because uh, we are um, we are dealing with things that either the books are too old, or most of the people writing the books do not have access to the cutting edge of vehicle dynamics, because it is usually made into the manufacturers, and there's lots of competition, and so there are many secrets. And also because some of the aspects of vehicle dynamics, like how the tires handle or how the aerodynamics uh, work. And I'm not telling, okay, yes, we know how much force a tire can produce, we know how much downforce or drag an aerodynamic element can produce. What we don't know, not only us but even the manufacturers many times, especially for tires, is every little detail of combining all those things together. Uh, there is still lots to learn, lots to explore. We're still learning, everybody still learns. And so, experience and contacts and interaction with engineers and manufacturers and everything is very important. And we have one saying, me and Stefano, uh, we say that back in the times we thought and we believed that 90% of simulation value and everything was the tire model back in the back in the early 2000, 2010, some 2015 still, yeah, 2010. So 90% of the simulation value was the tire model. Nowadays, we believe that 95%, say, of the simulation value is the tire model, and another 95% is the aerodynamics, and another 95% is the chassis, flexes, and everything else. So every single element has become so important, and the more you know, the more doubts you have, and the more data you need, and the more experience you need to understand what is going on. And understanding what is going on is also needs tons of experience. especially when you have to deal with drivers, because the feedback that the driver gives you, uh, you always have to take it into perspective and understand what they mean. The job of the driver is to complain. That's his job. The job is to go fast and complain that he cannot get faster. Okay, that's his job. If you have a driver that doesn't complain, the teams do not want him. You know, so you go and talk with a driver, and he tells you, oh, when the tires are cold, there is no grip at all, no grip at all, ice skating, no grip at all, it's terrible, no grip at all. And so at first, you say, okay, if it's like that, you don't have any data because nobody gives you a telemetry with the lap out, and usually the guys at the lap out will never push 100%. They will try, to heat up the tire slowly, and so you don't have specific data, and you don't know how much, lateral G the tire or the car can produce with a very cold tire. And so you say, okay, they told me that the tire is cold, so it must be ice skating. So you put some imaginary value and you make the car completely going ice skating. And then they try the car and they tell you, no, this is way too much sliding and I cannot drive it. And so you are there and you cannot understand. You put something higher and they tell you, no, that is way too much grip because when it's cold, it's ice skating. So you don't understand what's going on. So at some point, you either manage to try it yourself or get some data that they are more, meaningful, or you talk with some engineers that are willing to share their experience. And in the end, you get to learn that. So here's what's happening: uh, the the human mind um, is very sensible to the differences of the g forces. And I give you an example. If you go with your car, let's say that you have a normal economo box or whatever, or even a small sport roadster or whatever, and you go into a roundabout, you're gonna go close to 0.97 Gs. Okay, steady state. So not peak, but steady state. You're gonna be around 0.97, 96, something like that. Uh, Now, if if you if you go with semi slicks, for example, you without any differences, or with a better car, much higher, a supercar or something like that, then you're probably gonna turn at a steady state of close to 1G, maybe 1.01. So we're talking about a difference of 0.03 Gs. Okay, that's the difference, 0.03 Gs, which in terms of speed, maybe with your, I don't know, Alfa Romeo, you are doing in the or the Miata, for example, you are doing in the roundabout around 60 kilometers per hour, and maybe I'm saying way too high. With a Porsche GTR 3 RS, instead of 60, you are feeling like you're going way too fast because you are feeling those 0.03 Gs are, like, oh, this is so much grip, so much grip. And then you control the telemetry or the, simply the kilometers, and you see that you are going something like 64, 65 kilometers per hour, so 4 or 5 kilometers per hour faster. And I'm exaggerating, really. Probably the difference is 2 or 3 kilometers per hour. That is the difference. But the brain is extremely, extremely sensitive to G changes. Now, imagine to have a car like those GT3 cars, all right, and the car normally does something like 1.5, 1.6 steady state on a fast corner. Okay, now you go over there with cold tires, and the car, instead of 1.6, it does 1.4. Now we're talking about 0.20, 0.2, 0. Not 0.02, but 0.2. So you can understand that the driver feels big differences in forces. The brain feels extreme differences in forces. But in the end, we are talking really from from a car that does 1.6, which is already mind-blowing, to a car that does 1.4, which is again mind-blowing. There is not a road car, not even with semi-slicks or whatever, that is capable of doing 1.4 in steady state. Uh, and that's not the only thing that changes, because the slip angles also changes. If the tire is cold, then the slip angle is even more narrow. So normally with these cars you have around 5 degrees of slip angle peak. We've talked about that in a previous video. But if the tire is cold, the slip angle goes down to 4 or 3. So you have even a more, nervous car. So you get a car that is nervous, and obviously creates much less forces. And so the driver comes back to you, and you say, how is it now that it's cold? And it tells you, oh, I'm gonna die. Everybody's gonna die. This is impossible to drive. I see uh, slides everywhere, because obviously the narrow slip angle doesn't let the car, grip and stay on steady state, but slides around. I cannot drive this car. It's impossible. The tires do not work. Now, if you don't know all the little details that I just told you, obviously you're gonna think, okay, the car is undrivable, which means that while the tires are cold, it's simply, ice. There's no grip at all. In reality, there is plenty of grip, much higher than a normal road car, so to say. But how that grip um, is produced, and what is the sensation that gives to the driver, is completely different. You know. So getting back to what we were saying, lots of reading, lots and lots of experience, talking, discussing, trying to find new things, and I can absolutely assure you that we are now laughing at what we were doing physics-wise in Netcar Pro. It was that bad in comparison. I mean, maybe it was nice to drive, but that's not simulation. We don't care if it's nice to drive or not. We care about if it's realistic or not. How close to reality it gets. And if it gets close to reality, it should be also nice to drive. Uh, so we are laughing at it now in Kunos, and I'm pretty sure that 5 years or 10 years from now, if I'll be able to still do this wonderful job, I will be laughing again about how ACC was, primitive. That's what's going to happen. So yeah, that's what it is. Okay, so let's move on. Sorry for the very long answer. Uh, is last question from Enzaleur. Sorry again. Possible that the R8 GT3 makes more sound in downshift. Example: replay YouTube during the next update. Guys, this thing. I'm not saying this to defend our work. We can always get better and better. But this thing that you guys watch a YouTube video that has been registered but with whatever um, GoPro, right? And you think that's the real sound. Well, it's not the real sound. The GoPro cuts um specific whatever frequencies. It's not there's not fidelity. Uh, I mean, Lucas Sodano can tell you everything about sound. He's very good. We are, registering the sounds directly from the cars with proper microphones and everything. So what you hear is very, very close. And I mean, everybody knows that Assetto Corsa is really probably the new benchmark in terms of sound engineering in simulators. So I'm not saying it cannot be done better, and maybe we have an issue without the R8, but I will say that watching whatever YouTube video on board is definitely not the correct sound of the car. It is close, but it's not the correct sound of the car. Anyway, moving on. I would like to see more special events. Possible, probably. I don't know. I'm not responsible for that, so I don't know. At the SRO NURBS on-site event, I had to full save first rave. Embarrassing as fuck. Sorry that you felt embarrassed, but for example, the Mercedes has practically only three ECU maps. The second ECU map is practically identical in power terms. I mean, you are losing 2 or 3 horsepower, and not even at the top end. The top end, you're probably losing 1 or 2 horsepower. You're losing 2 or 3 horsepower in the middle range, and you are gaining, I think, about 8 or 10% fuel consumption, which is more than enough to finish any race. So, as we said before, uh, it's good to be prepared for long races. Renu asks, what is the next in your secret roadmap in terms of adding content? No idea. Uh, all right. Magic Dog, he's an aerospace engineering student doing FCAI, AE, and thinking about becoming race engineer. Best of luck, mate. I invite you. I fortunately didn't had the the brains and the opportunity, and didn't choose to become an engineer academically, at least. And I found myself having big problems learning stuff that I should have learned when I was much younger. So I'm still struggling, especially with maths and equations. So best of luck to you, and great career and job. Tricky, difficult, so be prepared, but really cool. All right, all right. Have you ever tried the tires model of Air Factor? If yes, how I find it? I have tried it. I think it's a tire model with great potential. I cannot comment because I don't know the code inside it. So I mean, that is something also that I dislike when I hear people, criticizing one sim or another. I mean, nobody of us has access to the source code of another sim, and especially the sim racers. So we cannot really know what is going on. Some of the things I really like them. Some other things I don't like them. I won't comment further because it's not, ethical, and it's not nice. I have tremendous respect for the guys that they did that physics engine. Uh, I think they have great things. That's it. But I keep, confident that we are doing our best. That's it. I cannot comment. It's not good to comment to other people's jobs, especially when you don't have access to the source code, or inside the work of what they do and how they do and why they did do it. Because sometimes, all the time you have to do some compromises, and sometimes you do compromises because of specific reasons. So let's see. Ooh, so many questions. Oh, guys, give me a second. Uh, Uh, yeah, issues with the AI, fuel issues. Yeah, we should have a look at that. I think some cars have issues going into the pits a bit too early. How much does ride height change with 100 liters of fuel? For example, on the Ferrari, does spring rate matters a lot there? Spring rate does matters. You can check how much ride height changes. If you go into a practice session, it doesn't work in qualifying on race or hot lap or hot stint. You have to go into a practice session either of a race weekend or a simple practice session like here. Actually, let me show you what I mean. So you are in a practice session, return to garage. Let me also switch the visibility into full screen like this. Okay, so you go to the setup, all right, and you have your ride height here, right? So 77.48. Now let's go and put full fuel, 120 liters. Go back to aero, and of course the ride height remains identical because the automagic, as we said, system of the setup takes care of everything and makes sure that the rest of the setup doesn't change because the fuel load changes. But then you go, as you say, into the race, and you keep doing laps and laps one after another, and obviously you consume your fuel load. So with much less fuel load, and we're talking about 120 liters, which is what, 100 kilos, something like that. Obviously, the ride height will rise, okay, with less weight. So how much? Fine. Fuel load test. You go into fuel load test. Now it's disabled. You put 10 liters, and instantly you can see the right height here, front and right, changing on the fly depending how much fuel you put. You see, 100 liters, 78. Back down to around 5 liters, something like this, 81. So this is how it is, and this is what is going to happen during the race. And now that I'm in practice session, I can go out and lap the car with this specific ride height and less fuel because it is in fuel load test mode. Okay. um, when and if I touch the right height here like that, one click, pump, you see everything goes back to the original setup and the fuel load test is disabled. You can also do the exact opposite. So for example, you can put here something like 60 liters or 30 liters fuel, go to the air again, and here put full load, and you can see that it goes lower. You see 74. So disabled 77, full 75 or 74. Here it is. So this is how you can test what is going to happen to your car ride height and also the handling, because as I said, you can go outside and test it in practice sessions. Um, is ACC easier to work with now that it is just one type of car class? That was the plan. We thought that was the plan, to learn a new engine like Unreal, and having to work with just one class would have been much easier. Unfortunately, we went full steam ahead to simulate all the rules that we can find in the SRO league. Sorry. And and we've got ourselves into a big adventure because it was so complicated, so many rules, so different things, that in the end we end up with a very, very complex simulator. uh, I apologize for all the issues that you guys had, or maybe still have. I think there are much less now, the problems, but you had at the start of this project. uh, because it wasn't that we were lazy or something like this. That it was so complex that we had really difficulties solving everything, trying to make everything work. It was really stressful for us. We've made it now, everything works properly, but yeah, it was hard times. uh, Earth Factor 2 is still king in terms of physics, but also it's a great job. Well, thank you for the great job. I have my doubts which one is king, but I cannot be objective. I will ask you though to, document yourself and learn, even for AC1, which other sim has, active aero, active differentials, three of them, active torque vectoring, full KERS and full MGKU and all those hybrid systems. Um, uh, who created first active real steering systems? Uh, what else did we did? Uh, Electronic brake bias. Mm, I mean, we did so many things for Assetto Corsa One, and we did even more for Assetto Corsa Competizione. That even ABS and traction control proper levels and not assists, they were first made in Assetto Corsa One. So yes, I will say that our Factor 2 did some amazing things and still has some amazing things, but we also have our share of industry first achievements. So you know, anyway, uh, yes, exactly. Every game has its plus and minus, and everybody has to it's a win-win situation. All right, so so many questions. How the game calculates steering angle and steering lock? I don't know what you mean. I mean, usually you just put it at 900 degrees and everything becomes automatic. Steering angle, yes, that is steering lock. It's steering ratio. So mechanical grip, the lower is this number, the more your steering wheels will will turn for the same angle of the steering wheel. What did I just said? So let's do it again. So the lower the steering ratio, the more the tires will turn for the same angle of the steering wheel. Okay. Uh, what Fanatel wheel works best with ACC in terms of button mapping? I have, the more buttons you have, the better. I'm very happy with the Formula One steering wheel, both the old one and the new one. The new one also has the rotors so that you can put, traction control and ABS with specific levels. So you don't have to go up, up, down, down, or something like this. You just say, okay, I want level 5. That's it. Uh, Open wheelers are better in Factor 2 than ACC. Yes, absolutely. Especially considering that we don't have them. Right. My Fanatec CSW2 failed. Sorry about that, mate. You recommend to send it back to fix or buy a used Thrustmaster or a direct drive or a new G29? Uh, if you can buy a direct drive, there's no comparison. Honestly, any direct drive is so much better than any other consumer will, even the CSW. And I didn't believe that until I tried it, but any direct drive is better. So if you can get a direct drive, believe me, the cost is high, but it is worth it. It is worth it. 3 millimeter ride height is different. Yes, on those cars, 3 millimeters ride height is a lot of difference, especially if it is 3 millimeters ride height at the front. It's already important difference at the rear, but it is a lot of difference at the front. The front is even more sensitive than the rear. So this is what we keep saying in all the live streams that we did about setups. Uh, in Assetto Corsa Competizione, I think we are the first to simulate properly aero maps of the whole car, and that made the cars extremely, extremely sensible in ride heights, extremely sensible and sensitive. I don't know which is the correct word, and that uh, asks from the cars uh, specific setups. That's why we're saying that each car has its setup operation window. If you go outside that, then it doesn't work anymore at all, or it start behaving at the opposite of what you would expect. And they ask for specific driving style. Yes, 3 millimeters is a lot. Remember that. We keep saying, and we will still keep saying, because it's very important. So Azar Alamuri says we need lower steering ratio for the setup screen because 900 is too much for GT3s. No, the GT3 cars do not have 900. I mean, my steering wheel is at 900 degrees, okay? But you will notice that if I start turning and look at the steering, at the virtual steering wheel, at some point it stops way before the 900 degrees. You see, it stops there. Now, depending on the car, some cars have, I don't know, 500 degrees. Some cars have 600. Some cars have 360. But generally, there is not a single GT3 car that will go over that will go at 900 degrees. Not even over 600. No, no one. Okay, it's not. The problem is not there. How are you guys going to simulate chassis flex in ACC? It's already simulated, mate. Since version 1.2, ACC simulates chassis flex. Uh, it is quite a big deal. We didn't simulate it until now because we didn't have the data, and most importantly, we didn't know what kind of differences we should feel, and how we should um, configure it. But we've managed, we found extra documentation and data. Fernando Barbarossa, our new physics developer, did some exceptional work, and we have chassis flex, and it is simulated differently for each track. That's why earlier I was saying that the Jaguar has a soft chassis, a little bit more chassis flex. If the car has more chassis flex, like the Jaguar, like the old Bentley, um, then the car is less sensible to mechanical grip setup changes, because you change, for example, the wheel rate, but you don't have only the suspension going up and down, but also the chassis. The stiffer the chassis of the car, like for example the new Porsche, the both the McLarens, that they have carbon fiber chassis. The stiffer the chassis, the more sensitive the car becomes to setup changes. You change a little bit the setup, and you do feel a lot of change into the handling. Be interesting why you guys opted for a static line instead of computing water displacement. You mean the driving line dynamically, with the laser scan and kind of graphics engine and the knowledge that we have. This is all we can do right now. It is as dynamic as it gets, but obviously it doesn't change the trajectory. Keep in mind that we didn't want to simulate just a lower grip of the water, but actually a proper depth of the water film, and that the tires drain this water depth. So the water is simulated much better, but we couldn't do it dynamically, at least not for now. We're still we're still exploring, trying to understand if there is a way to do it, but for now it's just not possible for us. I should have some good addition to my salaries from my boss for making these streams. Marco, I hope you're listening to the guy. Remember, yeah, raise, raise. Thank you, thank you, Ace. All right, so yeah, change the steering wheel only for the car setups. Uh, If the sausage still flexes, that means you should grill it more. Well, good to know. uh, Motec sometimes displays lap time with a few milliseconds different from ACC. Where does it come from? Milliseconds might be rounding error. Not so sure about that. I will have a look, but if it's really milliseconds, might be some rounding error. What is yeah, question about installation stiffness with resecting chassis flex? I'll be honest, chassis flex, we talk about chassis flex, but in reality, everything flexes. Okay, everything flexes. And most importantly, and we don't have that with us, we have no idea what is happening. I mean, the arms flex, the suspension points flex, um, they flex in 3 dimensions. Nobody has specific data about that. Probably not even the manufacturers for this kind of cars, except some very high-end manufacturers. Um, we don't know how to do this, and not only we don't know how to do this, but probably the frequencies that they generate are so high that our refresh physics engine, the refresh of the physics engine, is not high enough to take it into account, and would probably result in something that it's not realistic at all. So again, you go step after step. Maybe in 10 years, uh, the calculation power of our PCs will permit us to go higher and try to simulate something like that, and maybe manage to get some data from that too. Can simulators have other applications than gaming, like for real car manufacturers? Are you kidding me? Absolutely. I mean, uh, there is no end to that. There's no end. I mean, they already use them. Most of the drivers use ACC or other sims to, train. And it's not a train like, okay, I need to keep my reflexes high. No, it's not just that. They use it, especially all the simulators they have laser scan tracks. They use them, to get better and understand the circuits, and because they know that, okay, you exit that turn, you get that bump, you're gonna find it also in real life. So it's very important to them. Some of the smaller teams use the simulators to try and make some setup choices and some ideas so that they don't arrive to the track, without any knowledge at all. Uh, uh, Manufacturers use the simulators in different situations. Um, they have normal simulators that they are probably a little bit of beefed up game simulators, let's call them games, like Assetto Corsa, or Factor 2, iRacing. Okay, and they use them properly. And then they have even more professional simulators, like there is a Factor Pro, or there is a solution that we give to our clients based on the graphics engine of the Assetto Corsa. uh, those kind of simulators, for example, Air Factor Pro, that everybody says, "Oh, Air Factor Pro is the same as the simulator." It's not. Well, first of all, they only sell it on manufacturers and maybe some of the very, very high-end teams. And then, practically, it never uses the physics engine of Air Factor, Air Factor 2. What it uses is the graphics engine, the sound engine, the collision engine, the main physics of gravity and all that stuff. And then on top of that, the manufacturers connect uh, various computers that each one of them runs their own simulators in big programs like MATLAB or Simulink, which are mathematical simulation programs. And they need many computers to make them run real time. And most importantly, what they do is that they can connect directly on those programs. They can connect EQs and electrical systems from the real car. So, for example, they have just finished a new ABS uh, EQ, which means computer. They get that and connect it to the actual simulation so that the ABS works directly from the real thing, the traction control the same, and so on. This is how their very, very professional, big in-house simulators work. So practically from our game simulators, they only use the assets and the core of the simulator in terms of graphics, sounds, collisions, all that stuff, and then the physics are completely different, made by them exclusively. But I'll tell you that yes, they are better, but not in every single way. Let me explain what I mean. So, for example, um, the professional simulators usually do not have ambient variations. They do not have rain. They do not have wind. They do not have, mm, clouds or not. Uh, they do not have the asphalt that becomes, rubbered or not. They do not have rain into the asphalt. They do not have tires that get consumed, um, or they do not have damages on the car. Why? Because the manufacturer is interested to validate new findings or differences in the handling model of the car or the aerodynamic model or the new electronic systems, ABS, traction control, whatever. So what they need is a driver that can do the same laps consistently, lap after lap after lap, with very specific lap times. So they will erase all the tire and wear and consumption and everything because they don't care about that. They need to be very certain that, okay, uh, give you an example, Mark Genet for Ferrari did a lap at Kielami at 1.40, okay, flat. Uh, Next day, he can do the same exact lap at the same exact conditions, identical. So now that we are sure that he can do this, let's put him a different traction control module and see if he can improve or if he is, slower. So they are trying to validate specific changes and be very specific and very accurate about that. So some of the things that you guys enjoy into the game simulators, practically they are not simulated into the high-end professional simulators because they don't want that. How close a relationship do Kunos have with the manufacturers of the back of ACC? How close do you work? Very, very closely. Very close. This is one of the reasons why we try to not, tell you all the data that we have available. It's, they trust us from some stuff, and they expect from us to, be. I mean, they know that we cannot hide everything. Obviously, it's not Formula One. I can assure you that if we go and do Formula One, we will get practically nothing. Maybe we can get something for old cars, but for new cars, it's going to be impossible. Uh, but for this kind of cars, we can get tons and tons of data. They are extremely helpful with us. They will try to hide some specific information. We will try to do reverse engineering from the, you know, telemetry and stuff like this. And for sure, we are not going to tell anybody because we want to keep this kind of collaboration, both because it's good for everybody, for us and for them, but also it's also very good for sim races because you guys can also have play with something that is extremely close to reality, especially in terms of what we had before that. So those real numbers from real ABS, AQ, etc. You guys need access to them when you make new cars. Well, yes, we get the access. We, especially we get. Uh, well, keep in mind the what we're trying to do, not only us but everybody else, is now the real systems cannot know with precision how much sleep aids a tire has, how much sleep it has, how wheel spin it has. They cannot know it specifically. They cannot know it with precision. So they use a number of sensors and a number of logic behind it to try and imagine how much sleep aids a tire has and try to keep it on the correct peak. Now, on the simulator, on the contrary, we know exactly what slip angle and slip ratio a tire is going, because obviously we have the equations to generate those numbers depending on the inputs that the simulation gets from the user. So we know exactly. I mean, when I say that, okay, the tire is at 5 degrees of slip angle, this is what it is. It is specifically this. So theoretically, I can create the perfect traction control, because I can put and keep my tire at the perfect uh, sleep edge of and the most efficient one. Now, what is this realistic? No. So the um, the thing here, what we're trying to do, okay, is that we are trying to make our systems worse, practically, to simulate the results of the professional systems. Of course, we cannot simulate them line by line, because they have I mean, they have complete computers with specific chipsets and sensors to make the ABS or the traction control work in the real cars. We have just one computer that has to do everything. But what we can do is, take the telemetry and the data, see how they work, and try to simulate the end result. So I know, for example, that this car has some lag going from one uh, sleep adds to another, or the refresh is lower, or maybe it doesn't use the cut of the ignition, or the advancement of the ignition, or whatever. Uh, so I try to simulate all those things to make it be worse than the ideal world that we have on the virtual solution, and make it more close to the real thing. Otherwise, it would be perfect, but it wouldn't be as realistic. Are there any plans on creating a more realistic damage model, visually and mechanically? Uh, there's the wheel and the whizzing, but to tell you that we are gonna make it, I don't know for sure. In terms of visual damage, we have also limitations. There are manufacturers and cars that do not like seeing, pieces of the bodywork flying around, so we cannot do that. And obviously, if you cannot do it for a couple of manufacturers, then you don't do it for all the other ones, because it's not like, this car completely gets destroyed, the other one, no, it doesn't make sense. So we have limitations in terms of visual damage. Mechanical damage, we are already doing it, as you know, guys. Not only in terms of tire damages, but we have also flat spots, graining, blistering. We have punctures. We are, I think, the first to do punctures from loss of air if you abuse the curbs, or going outside the surface, the tarmac, and so on. We have now brake damages. In terms of engine, yes, we could do something better, but it is also low in the priority list, because, as they told us, most of those cars are indestructible, bulletproof in terms of engine. I remember an engineer telling me that the GTE Ferrari 488 at Le Mans ended the race with something like 140 degrees Celsius of water temperature, because they had a problem with the front radiator, and the engine was like no problem at all. Mind blowing. Uh, well, yeah, yes. It depends what you want to. I mean, our our motto is, hardcore realism as much as possible. Again, I'm not saying that we manage to do everything as realistic as possible, but we try. We try. Will the tire wear ever be displayed as a percentage? No, it will never be, because it takes away from the simulation experience, and also because you don't get to see something like that when you're driving. You have to feel it, but it is impossible to know how much the tire is worn out. The only way to know it is, you go out on the practice session, you do 20 laps with the same tire set, you go back and you see how much you have consumed, and then you do some calculations to know that, okay, in the race I'm gonna do 30 laps on my stint, so I know more or less in what conditions I'm gonna be. Okay, so that's why we don't. I mean, it's very easy to show it, but we won't. We won't show it. Are you guys planning to be at the Sim Expo? Well, last year we were, possibly this year too. Hopefully, I hope so. I don't know. All right. So yes, I see that the viewers count going down and down. Obviously, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and tomorrow I still have to work. So yeah. With the new DLC, the player count has gone way up. Also, I think because the title is now mature and people can use it and be happy about it, and it most of the time works properly. Uh, does that help to motivate us? Are you kidding me? We are flying, jumping around. I mean, woohoo! This is the actual situation. Sorry, inside Kunos right now, and absolutely motivated 100% to keep going.